This is All India Radio. In the program Money Talk, now we bring you a discussion on robust growth in GST collection. The participants are Gopal, Krishna, Agarwal, Economic Analyst, and Dhawan, AIR Correspondent. Robust growth in GST collections in the country. The gross GST revenue collected during December 2022 reached nearly 1.5 lakh crores. 1,49,507 crores to be exact. And compared to December 2021, a 15% hike. Mr. Agarwal, so we've been seeing this hike carry on. What do you think are the critical and the primary reasons for this hike?
One thing is that yesterday about the demonetization, Supreme Court order has also come. And what we think is that post-demonetization, tax base has increased, formalization of the economy has increased, and more and more manufacturing sector and other units who are working in the informal sector have been shifted to formal sectors, and that is one of the main reasons. Second is the increase in the tax base. With the implementation of the new GST regime, the more and more transactions which earlier times not being recorded and there was no audit trail, now there is a complete audit trail for every transaction in the manufacturing or business or services sector. So all that has resulted into capturing these transactions into the GST network, and therefore the GST revenue is consistently increasing. If you look into the consistent figures for last 7 or 8 months, you will find that the GST has been post-pandemic has crossed 1.4 lakh crore every month. It shows that there is a formalization of more and more business ecosystem and complete establishment of the audit trail. These are the basic reasons. But in addition, if you look into the PMI figure, which was released yesterday, it tells the PMI for the manufacturing sector has rose to 57.8 in December. That shows that the manufacturing sector is continuously expanding. And this also shows that the manufacturing activity in India is picking up, and that has also contributed to the growth in the GST figures.
So do you think that the COVID effect on GST collections has now been neutralized and we're on a steadily increasing path?
Definitely. If you see Purchasing Managers Index, that gives the level of manufacturing activities in the country. Compared to last year, it has shown a very robust growth. That shows that post-pandemic, because of the government support on the production-linked incentive schemes in almost 14 sectors, 4 lakh crores of revenue support had been given to the manufacturing sector under the PLI scheme. So that has also given a positive impetus to the manufacturing sector, and the manufacturing sector, services sector in its own way is also increasing. And India is on the economic activity post-pandemic is an outlier. You can look into the reports given by IMF, World Bank or OECD or other, even domestically RBI report, Ministry of Finance report. All those show that the economic activity post-pandemic has crossed and reached the level of economic activity which was before this all pandemic started. These are all cumulatively resulting in such a robust growth on the GST figure.
In the future, when we are looking at continuing this growth trend, what do you think are some of the critical areas that we need to keep a watch out and ensure that other than consumer spending, and of course inflation does play a little role, but of course compliance and all that. So what are some areas we need to focus on? Because finally, once we get a wider tax base, so the graph won't totally be completely upward. It will become steady and then again take another upward. What are new initiatives that we would require for that?
One thing is that 1st of February next month, we will have the new budget where the estimates about the revenue and expenditure will come out. And the government in the last 2 years had been spending a lot on the infrastructure, whether construction of road, railways, waterways, airports, etc. They have created a robust demand in the industry sector with steel, cement and other construction equipment, etc. That has created a good demand from the side of the government, and that has also helped the industry to further get the benefit of the government demand and increase investment, one thing. So the government has to continue spending on the infrastructure. It has a multiplier effect. One thing is it creates demand, and second, it creates a good environment where integrated supply chains can develop and the movement of raw material and finished goods eased out. So that is one thing where further impetus to the industries will come. So government will have to continue spending on infrastructure. It will create ease of doing business, at the same time create demand in the industry. Second thing is the government will have to continue, and what the indications are that the government will continue with the PLI scheme, which has seen a very good incentive to the manufacturing sector. You see, mobile industry is booming. Many of the international companies are setting up their manufacturing units. Similarly, automobile sector has seen a big boom, and the government is also focusing on renewable energy, solar energy, green hydrogen energy. All these will further boost the economy, and the pharmaceutical sector is one area where India is performing very good. It is become the global hub for the vaccination and other generic medicines. These all things are very important. Government is also working on bilateral trade agreements. Last week only we have entered into trade agreement with Australia. Similarly, we are tying up with European countries, USA and Arab countries. So these bilateral trade agreements will help our manufacturing to integrate their manufacturing with the global and regional supply chain. So all this together points out to a robust future in this 2023, and which the government is supporting with all its initiatives. At the same time, government is also supporting the lower strata of the population through direct benefit transfer.
Right, keeping the principle of equity in mind and ensuring that consumer spending increases across all sectors. Mr. Agarwal, we also know that, of course, there is a central portion and there is an amount that goes to the state, and we've seen that at least the last figures that came in, Maharashtra was the top, then Karnataka and Gujarat, and these figures keep changing periodically. But do you think that somewhere the amount collected from a state would also be indicative of where the government needs to push economic activity in which state, keeping in mind that we need to help everyone grow together, because GST collection is an indication of economic activity and development and growth in that state?
Yeah, surely. And in the GST collection, the current structure has three portions in the total collection. One is the center CGST, which belongs to the central government. One portion belongs to the state government, which depends upon the state's activities. And in addition, there is interstate IGST, which is divided between the state and the center depending upon their performance and their other criteria. So if you look into the current 1,49,000 something collection in this December, you will find that the total state share is almost 78,000 crores. And balance is about the center and divided between the states. So there is a contribution from the center to the states, but states are also now competing among themselves to attract manufacturing and global investment. If you look into the Uttar Pradesh, in February, Uttar Pradesh is organizing an investor summit, which they target that they will attract a 15 lakh crore of investment in February 2023 from the global investors. So certain states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, and they have been performing very well. Even south states like Andhra and others are competing at a global level to attract investment. More and more states will have to get into this activity so that their revenue is boosted. Right. And they have to also look into that their budgetary deficits are controlled.
Mr. Agarwal, on the 1st of July 2022, the GST introduction completed 5 years. And of course, we are now about 5.5 years. Some critical challenges have been overcome. What are some steps that we took which actually really made this growth take the leap?
The whole ecosystem of GST is now stabilizing. It is all more than 5 years that the now GST has been implemented. And when in 2016 it was initially implemented, there were so many glitches in the software side. People were not able to completely take the benefit of the online registration, editing of their certain errors. Complete audit trail was not established, that from the supplier to the buyer, the whole GST network was not properly being integrated. Now the software side is very robust and it has stabilized. Even e-way bill are a good way, which has reduced the timing of the transportation and also has been successful in capturing all the movements of the goods across the country. So GST system, as far as the ecosystem and software and other things are concerned, they have completely stabilized. So that is one important factor. And further, the whole benefit of GST is that from the initial stage of registration to filing of returns, assessment, refund, now is completely streamlined and is completely online. So this initiative has helped lot of ease of doing business. You can sit in your own office or your premises and register yourself, file your returns, get the input tax credit, get assessment orders, and even get refunds. So this whole process is now very transparent, efficient, online, and you get the input tax credit so that the cost of input tax credit is passed on to the consumer. So
Right.
GST ecosystem is so nicely developed that ultimately with the input tax credit, the consumer is getting benefited. So another important factor that we should keep in mind is that though before GST was introduced, the average tax collected in the form of indirect tax was 25 to 30% on every product. Post GST, around 3-4 months back, a RBI report came that the average GST rate has come down to 11.6%. So the ultimately consumer has benefited that they were paying around 25 to 30% indirect tax, which has on an average now come down to 11.6% on an average, and still the revenue of the government has increased manifold.
Absolutely.
So it is a double benefit that the country is seeing through the introduction of GST. Revenue at the government level has increased manifold, and the cost to the consumer on the retail side or any side has reduced almost from 28% to 11 or 12% on average.
Right.
So that's double multiple benefits, and therefore people have
More trust in the system, more compliance. Absolutely. Mr. Agarwal, when we talk of, any system working, our focus is on technology, compliance, processes. But also I think due credit here goes to the person who sits behind the implementation, the officers, the training of the implementing officers. A lot has also been put into that, and due credit to the department?
Surely, because without the input from the department and the commitment from the officers, this system, because if you look into the way GST was implemented, or if you look into the examples of other countries where GST was introduced, it took almost a decade or more than several years that the whole GST system was implemented and smoothened. But in India, within 2 years, we were able to streamline the whole system, and that is because we have good technical brains behind it. There was a push from the government side. Leadership was committed that we will implement. Prime Minister personally himself launched it as a big feature of the economic reform, and he said that with the implementation of GST, we are going into a second revolution of financial independence. That was a big commitment from the Prime Minister's side. And the Finance Minister at that point of time, Arun Jaitley ji, they focused on implementation, and the whole department supported them. And also our people in the business community, etc., have been very receptive to the changes, and our professional institutions like Institute of Chartered Accountants, Institute of Company Secretaries, those professionals also work very hard so that the customer or the business community does not have much difficulty in understanding the things.
Absolutely.
The department, the leadership, the Prime Minister's vision, and the adaptations by the business community and the professionals all have worked into creating a robust ecosystem.
Right. So what we are hearing you say, Mr. Agarwal, is that share credit, which is the most beautiful thing, I think, for any success, here is being shared by multiple stakeholders. And that's why it is not one person, one department, one area success. It's the country's success. Thank you so much, Mr. Agarwal, for joining us on the show. It was a pleasure speaking with you. You were listening to a discussion on robust growth in GST collection. The participants were Gopal Krishna Agarwal, Economic Analyst, and Dhawan, AIR Correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.